Hello, BookTube. We're going to continue on with my library tour for 2022. Keep in mind, this is not only a private endeavor on my part, where I'm making a visual record of the books that I have in the year 2022. It's also a call to action. I want all of you to make library tours in 2022. We are in the Penguin Classic Bookcase, which for those of you who've been with the channel for a long time will remember used to be the Penguin Classic wall. Until I downsized it. I downsized the Penguin Classic wall. I stood at that wall once upon a time, not just to pore over the books the way that's the bean you hear in the background, just going nuts over on the bed. I stood there not only to pore over the books, as I usually did, but also to pull out the doubles, the triples, in some cases the quadruples, and also tons and tons of books that I didn't want. Tons and tons of books that I only had because they were Penguin Classics, but would never read. That did the trick. That changed the Penguin wall into a Penguin bookcase and freed up ever so much more room. And going through this again, this is the first time I've really gone through this bookcase in an inventory sense since then. And so far, I haven't looked at anything and thought, oh my, that I made a mistake. I got rid of something I shouldn't. So let's just continue. First, we'll do the outside transverse books and whatnot, starting with one copy. I have two copies of this, but this is one copy of the Royal Tyler translation of Tale of Genji. Great big thing. I found this one, I believe, in a little free library, or maybe at the Brattle, and it had this huge rip in the front. I couldn't care less about such a thing. This is a Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition with the French flaps and the deckled edges. I just repaired the cover. Fine by me to have another copy for. I'm pretty sure this was nothing. Let's see. I think I've solved the ergonomics. The next one is also a double. I have doubles of some of these things just because I love them so much. This is a double of the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition of the complete works of Jane Austen, in what I think is a very lovely edition. I'm just realizing now that it's very wishy-washy light today, but it's just enough to make trouble. I love this volume. Just love it. It's so inviting and floppy in the hand. I often don't want to find a Jane Austen novel in the collected novels. I often want one that stands on its own. I have them standing on their own, many different forms, but sometimes I do want just the book itself. Okay, all right, we've already seen this one. We saw this one just recently on this channel. It just made it here into the little book room. This is classical literary criticism. It was sent to me as a gift from one of you, so it is here in this section. Okay. All right, now we have the Penguin Classic editions of Alex Rider by Anthony Horowitz. These aren't actually Penguin Classic editions. They just have really neat covers, and the publisher redid the whole series with these covers, so they sent a few of them to me, and I like them so much that I kept them. What they're doing on the Penguin wall, I don't know. I don't know why they're here. So I will set them aside, because they don't go back on the shelf. It's right. If you find something that doesn't belong there, it doesn't go back there. Then we have The Ring in the Book by Robert Browning. Long, wonderful poem that here has a key mistake. It is a key mistake to put a bookmark in a book if the bookmark is bigger than the book. That's a key mistake. That is just a recipe for damage. So that bookmark can go over here until I can find another bookmark for Browning and a place for that bookmark. Then we have Quintus Curtius Rufus. This is the history of Alexander. In the Penguin Classic, obviously much visited, much used. This is often mistakenly called a primary source for Alexander the Great. That's unfortunate, but it is a terrific book on Alexander the Great. And there you have a detail from the family of Darius before Alexander by Veronese. And that stems from a story in Quintus Curtius Rufus where the family of King Darius I, who he abandoned on the battlefield, were brought before Alexander and his friend Hephaestion, his best friend, and some say his lover, Hephaestion. And because Hephaestion cut a bigger figure, he was a taller, more beautiful man, they automatically started debasing themselves to him. And he had to point to Alexander, who was next to him, and say, I'm not actually the guy who conquered your son and your husband and whatnot. And Alexander, the quip that Quintus Curtius Rufus gives him, which I assure you comes only from fiction, was Alexander saying, "Never mind, he's Alexander too." And that the thing this is full of anecdotes like that about Alexander the Great. So a book definitely to read about Alexander. Believing might want to read up on everything that's in there, especially if, like that anecdote, it seems too good to be true. Then we have Penguin Diddik series for a while. They don't anymore, and I think they're now a little bit on the collectible side. I gobbled them up as they came out. The in English series, where they would take older works, classic works and whatnot, and give you a volume of that work in various different translations over centuries. This is the Virgil in English volume, but I think I have them all, or almost all of them. They're terrific. Absolutely terrific. You get all kinds of different translating styles. They're actually wonderful books to go through in an attempt to learn who, as a translator, you really like, because you'll get to see what styles of translating you really like, because you get to see all those styles next to each other. Then we have the selected poems of Robert Louis Stevenson, so famous for Kidnapped and Treasure Island and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that people tend to forget that he can be a very, very effective poet. Then we have a mass market paperback of the old Penguin edition of Middlemarch. There is a figure winding her way along a country road to a country church. This is edited by W.J. Harvey. It's obviously much battered, but let's see here. Oh, okay. All right. Okay, we have, this is an English language translation of Chateaubriand's Memoirs from Beyond the Tomb. Delightful reading, and I have clippings in here. We've gone through this before here. They really don't work. A couple of people reviewed this when it came out, because Chateaubriand is so tempting to write about. But if you're going to put reviews in here, they can't be like this, because that's wider than the book. You have to fold it one more time to bookmark size. Okay, and that is all of the Transverse books. Then we'll move on. Here we have a Penguin that I go back to often. This is another Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. This is Sagas of the Icelanders. Big, beautiful thing. This is also a volume where, when I see it, I grab it, even if it's double, because you don't see it that often. Okay, we have the Penguin Classic of the Jewish War by Josephus, that was briefly in vogue in America about 40 years ago when the TV miniseries Masada came out. The miniseries Masada is taken from an incident in Josephus' The Jewish Wars, and so it was reprinted and it had a sticker on it, and people were interested in Josephus again. Usually the only people who are interested in Josephus are Christian apologists who are seeking to misquote him. But it gives me a little wedge to recommend the miniseries Masada, starring Peter Strauss and Peter O'Toole, with just commanding guest performances by both Anthony Quayle and David Warner. They're just a fantastic show, just fantastic. Okay, then we have Lives of the Later Caesars. This is was put together. Various authors brought together a kind of a continuation of Suetonius, except for the couple of bits and pieces at the beginning of this volume that were put together by editors, by various contemporary classicists, of some of the editors who aren't in the Lives of the Later Caesars. But really, really interesting stuff. The writers who did these lives, had access, of course, to huge numbers of sources that are gone, so that we don't have. Okay, then we have Chronicles of the Crusades, another battered Penguin classic, another battered trade, full of great stories, just full of them. We have the Magna Carta, the Penguin edition of the Magna Carta. This is by David Carpenter, who does a huge introduction, huge notes. This is an unbelievable volume to have for understanding Magna Carta. More so, I mean, if you had this, you could dispense with all of the popular general interest histories that have ever been written. This will do it for you, and it's also a fantastic reading. Okay, then we have Gregory of Tours, History of the Franks, another battered copy. There's a battered mass market of a lot of these here as well. This is terrific, terrific reading, popular history of the best sort. Okay, then The Age of Bead. I think this has been updated. This got an update, I think, at one point. I don't think this is the updated one. This is translated by J.F. Webb and D.H. Farmer, and it contains Bede's Life of Cuthbert, Lives of the Abbots of Wereth and Jarrow, Edius's Life of Wilfrid, and The Voyage of St. Brendan. I think the updated one has different things in it. But I am a huge fan of the Venerable Bede. Of course I was going to have that book. We have the earliest English poems. I can't remember if this has Beowulf in it. Heroic poems. Yes, it has Beowulf in it. And elegies and riddles, of course, all that sort of thing. This is by Michael Alexander. Okay, this is another one that that we saw. We saw another example of this. I wonder if I can grab it. Yes, we saw this. The Elder Edda. Penguin brought out a bunch of their Old English and Norse classics with new cover designs when Peter Jackson's The Hobbit movies were coming out. And this, they brought out the Alexander translation of Beowulf in the same style as those. They aren't together here, and I think I have others of them too that also aren't together. We have Froissart. This is the Chronicles. Terrific, heroic history, very much in the Livy school of history, where you've got too good to be true scenes, plenty of interpolated speeches. The idea, the school, the philosophy, don't interpolate speeches, don't make up words for characters, don't suppose things, don't create scenes just because they're irresistible. That philosophy of the late 18th and early 19th century German school had not yet taken hold, of course, so you've got all sorts of it in here. It makes for very entertaining reading. Oh my. Okay, all right. This is big. This is the next three is the David Wormersley Penguin Classic of Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, unabridged. Beautiful volumes that just cover all of it. So forever and ever, Penguin did, and maybe for all I know still does, an abridged one volume of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. I probably have one of them, or maybe even more than one of them here. For forever and ever they did that, but finally they did the unabridged. First in a gigantic, heavy-duty box set of hardcovers, and then in these trade paperbacks. King Harold Saga, familiar to those of you from Sagalong. I did King Harold Saga. And we have another one of these ancient Legends of the Ancient North series. This is the Saga of the Volsungs, also in these new editions. I don't know why they're not all together, but that's all right. The Orkneyinga Saga. I have a lot of these Norse sagas in mass market paperback as well, but it turns out I have more than what I thought in trade paperback. Yeah, here's Sagas of the Warrior Poets. A collection of different Norse sagas here. This has Cormac's Saga, Saga of Halfred, Troublesome Poet, Saga of Gunnlaug's Serpent Tongue, Saga of Bjorn, Champion of the Hraesthal People, and Viglund's Saga. So a whole bunch of little sagas there. Then the Saga of Grettir the Strong. A whole bunch of Norse sagas here. That's interesting. Okay. We're done with the Norse sagas. We have the City of God by St. Augustine. Again, this is one of a couple of editions of copies of the Penguin that I have. Oh God, the sun. The sun. Here, let me leave the frame. Thing I hate to do. See if we can fix it. We had rain all morning long. I wasn't expecting the sun to make an appearance. All right, so that was that shelf. And keep in mind, my doing that occasionally in these videos is not my permission for you to do that. If I could have prepared... Anyway. All right, so we're gonna try and set some of these up and continue on to another shelf. We'll continue on to another shelf in an attempt to get this Penguin bookcase done. I'd like to get it done. Although it's still a source of endless temptation. I could live in this Penguin bookcase forever. These are my oldest bookish friends. Okay, there we go. That ought to do. That ought to do just fine. All right. Let's move on to the next shelf, and we'll deal with the crosswise books first. We have the Robert Fitzgerald translation of the Aeneid, which I have in a couple of other forms too. I have the hardcover. We have the John Dryden translation of the Aeneid. So that, what is that? Is that 3 Aeneids so far that we've seen in this Penguin tour? We have, oh, good Lord, you've got to be kidding me. All right, well, I obviously did fail during that winnowing period of this Penguin Classic wall in some ways, because this is not 1, not 2, but the 3rd copy of the Penguin Book of Victorian Verse. The 3rd one. Let's not put this back where it was, because I'm going to want to get rid of 2 of those. Then we have Reginald Rose, 12 Angry Men. This is the original play that the great movie comes from. The great Henry Fonda movie comes from there. Butterfield 8 by John O'Hara. Very nice to see Penguin starting to reprint John O'Hara novels. They did Butterfield 8. You'll notice that some of these have pub sheets in them, because I've been getting Penguin Classics in the mail from Penguin for over 10 years. So quite a few of the books that are in here are those. Yeah, this is another John O'Hara. This is the New York Stories. They absolutely deserve to be in Penguin Classic. They are fantastic. Okay, then we have a Penguin Classic trade paperback with a black spine of Shakespeare. Not very common. Should be. It should be. There should be, what is an example? Let me show you. Okay, well, we've already seen it. See this? This is a Penguin Classic Deluxe edition of the complete works of Jane Austen. The complete novels of Jane Austen. You wouldn't need a book much bigger than this in the Penguin Classic Deluxe edition for the complete Shakespeare. So why don't you do it? Why isn't there a complete Shakespeare in the Penguin Classic? Why isn't there a whole shelf of individual plays with individual introductions and notes of Penguin Classic Black Spine Shakespeare? Why is that true? Why isn't there a Penguin Classic Black Spine edition of the first folio? But at least we have this. This is 4 tragedies, which since A.C. Bradley, who we saw for his Shakespearean tragedies, since then, these are the 4 tragedies that people always include. They always segment these off, teach them in schools, regularly rank them as the greatest of Shakespearean tragedies. I, myself, always wish that tradition had not taken hold, because I think Julius Caesar is a much better tragedy than Othello. I think that should be in here instead. But maybe that'll change in the censorious 20th century. The censorious 20th century is starting to dislike Othello. They're starting to turn on that play. They don't care how good or bad it is. They just know that it was written by a white man who demonizing a black man. So maybe it'll swing to Julius Caesar. Who knows? Who knows? Certainly he is the Antifa Shakespeare choice now, isn't he? Then we have A.E. Stalling's translation of the Works and Days of Hesiod. Very nice, thin little book. But Stalling is not only a very good translator, but a very good poet. So you get the best of both worlds. Then we have the trade paperback of Michael Grant's translation of the Murder Trials by Cicero. I'm pretty sure I have a mass market of this as well. This is a collection of the prosecution summing up speeches that Cicero would have had working in front of crowds in the Roman courts. Almost certainly they would not have been as neat and clean and forensically perfect as the scripts in here, but I don't mind. They still shed light on these things. More light and different kinds of light than I once thought. So I just recently got and read a book of Roman history called Cicero as Evidence that is all about the murder trials and sheds light on them completely. I'm glad I'm going to set this aside because I'm going to want to reread these things. Okay, then we have another double. Oh my, this is not turning out well, is it? This is another double. This is another copy of Quintus Curtius Rufus's Life of Alexander. Here with the famous Alexander mosaic. So I've got 2 of these. God, hope there's only 2 and not more than that. Let's see here. We have this is a new Penguin Classic edition. Must have dropped its pub sheet. This is a new Penguin Classic edition of the Calavella. I believe it's the first one that they've ever done. This is the new Penguin Classic designs. You've got the black spine, but not the script. And the penguin on the spine is not in a circle. It's in this white banner here. And the writing on the spine is just block script. But I don't think Penguin had ever done the Calavella before that. Oxford World Classics had, but I don't think Penguin had. Let's see here. Let's just keep going. Okay, more John O'Hara. This is 10 North Frederick. The John O'Haras really ought to be together. I'll see what I can do about that. We have the Theban plays of Sophocles in the Robert Fagel's translation. So you get them all, plus a long, wonderfully passionate introduction. Okay, here's another volume in that series of books in English. This is Catullus in English. So you get 5 centuries of translators, all rubbing against each other all the way through the whole works of Catullus. Here we have Jason and the Argonauts by Apollonius of Rhodes. This is translated by Aaron Pachigian with great notes. Let's see, what's this next one? The Poems of Propertius in a battered trade paperback, because Propertius is a lesser known Roman poet, but one of my favorites, so I go back to it all the time. Okay, then of course, naturally, my favorite of the volumes of the In English series, this is Horace in English. Horace brings out a kind of affection in his translators that not a lot of ancient writers do. And you get that in spades in this volume. I think the Horace in English volume probably has more entries in it than any other author that were never intended for publication, that were just private, that are just found by the editors here and compiled into this great book. Then we have a mass market paperback. Oh, a battered old mass market paperback of Rosemary Edmonds' translation of War and Peace. Battered old thing that I got as soon as it came out. I've read many, many times. Let's press on here. The Complete Poetry of Thomas Wyatt. And once again, I'll try to remember to link to anything that I've written about here. I've written about almost all of these at one point or another, at one length or another. It's just sometimes it's very, very time consuming to go find all of those things, and finding them is only half the battle. I then have to reformat them, clean them up. They all have broken picture links, so I have to put in new pictures and take out the old ones, all that sort of stuff. And it takes time. And some of them aren't findable at all. I know that half the things that I've shown you in just this video I have written about. I will try to find them, but sometimes not. Yesterday, in addition to the Penguin Classic, to this library tour, I did a comic book video about The Savage Sword of Conan. And when the J. Momoa Conan movie was coming out in theaters that summer, probably 10 years ago, I spent that whole summer writing about Conan. All of it. I wrote about the original stories, then the reprints. I wrote about the pastiche novels. I wrote about the comic books. I wrote about The Savage Sword of Conan. I wrote about the movies. I called it Cimmerian Stravaganza. And I routinely went to it on my old literary blog, Steve Reads. I must have generated thousands of words on Conan that summer. Can't find them at all. I can find occasional links to some of them if I go through Google, but I can't find them on any home website in order to fix them and reprint them. This is very frustrating. Okay, then we have Martial in English, the Roman poet Martial, whose ditties are featured in I, Claudius. We have, let's see here, the Peter Wiggum translation of the Poems of Catullus. Many copies of this. I just have to figure out where they are. That's all. How are we going to do this for ergonomics here? We're still doing Transwise books, but I'm going to try and we'll go all the way to 40 minutes. I'll try and get this done today, these 2 shelves. So we have Arrian, the Campaigns of Alexander. Another really, really indispensable Alexander quote-unquote source that you have to use. A source in the sense that these authors were using things that we don't have access to. The Robert Graves translation of the 12 Caesars of Suetonius that has been reprinted 80 million times. I love it. Absolutely love it. Because we're doing some Roman stuff here. We have the Satires of Juvenal. I love, although it's really due. We're really due for a nice, big, annotated, heavily introduced volume of the Satires of Juvenal in that size. New translation, new everything. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Then we have the Letters of Pliny the Younger. That is a scene from Trajan's column on the cover there, and Pliny was an official in the Roman Empire under the Roman Emperor Trajan. and wrote a lot of letters to his friends. He very much was modeling himself on Cicero's published letters, but they're really good, full of little details of the time, of his day. And the final part of this collection is a whole chapter or book, or however you want to phrase it, on his correspondence with Trajan, which is invaluable. Just invaluable for giving us a window into how the imperial bureaucracy worked. Virtually many other imperial officials saved and published their correspondence, but time has not been kind. We don't have a lot of that. And of course, the letter, that final volume of letters of Pliny to Trajan is also valuable, again, for the aforementioned Christian apologists, because Pliny asked Trajan, what am I supposed to do with these people calling themselves Christians? What am I supposed to do with them? I'm not really even sure what they are. Okay, then we have another volume in this series. This is Juvenal in English. So we just had the Satires of Juvenal in translation. This is many translations. The Juvenal volumes ought to be together. I'll have to clear this out, make some sense of it. Oh my, oh goodness. Okay, this is the Peter Levy translation of the Psalms in English in a Penguin Classic. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Full of explanatory notes. We have the Fairy Queen, Edmund Spenser's now unreadable epic poem, The Fairy Queen. This is a heavily reinforced paperback that could stand World War III, and has a curious distinction among my Penguin Classics that it was the subject of a video years ago. When I reinforced this book, I made a video out of the process and nattered on about Spenser. So if I remember, I'll leave a link to that video down below. Then we have this little sliver of the Digest of Roman Law. The Emperor Justinian decided to write out the law in big cases and little, in great detail. Again, a fascinating glimpse at the workings of the empire. Always wish that Penguin's volume were bigger, but I'll take what I can get. Okay, then we have this is another volume of those Legends from the Ancient Norse series. We've now seen 3 of them. This is Sargawin and the Green Knight. This is a translation by Bernard O'Donoghue. That's very good in its way. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe Penguin did reprint some version of the Green Knight to go along with the movie, the recent movie. I'm a little bit fussy when it comes to this particular poem. I have many editions of it in this room, but the best edition of it, the best translation that's ever been done, has never been collected and is almost unfindable. It was done by Adam Golaski for Open Letters Monthly, the online literary journal where I was the managing editor, more than 10 years ago. Adam started doing his own translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. He called it his simply Green, and captured the original poem better than any translator ever has. Necessarily took some liberties with it, but who cares? If you're getting what the poet wanted you to get for the first time in 1,000 years, then, a little liberty is called for. Green is not a book. I don't know that even those old issues of Open Letters Monthly are available on a Google search. And if they are, I don't know if the poetry in those issues would be available. So I don't know how easy it would be to read the extant chapters of Green by Adam Golaski. I have no idea. But when I was reading them, I was coming to them having read, 15 or 20 different English versions of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and knowing right away that it was better than all of them. So I look at these others and I think, yeah, what I really want. But I don't have it, and I don't think I ever will. Okay, this is Xenophon, Conversations with Socrates. Xenophon is famous for his bigger, more robust military histories, but he was also a friend and pupil of Socrates. We have the trade paperback of the Aubrey de Selincourt translation of Livy's War with Hannibal. This is adapted. This is it's translated by Aubrey de Selincourt, but I think this is an updated translation where somebody went through and brushed up his anachronisms or whatnot. I love this volume, the original volume, to pieces. I love Livy. He's one of my favorite ancient writers, but I also love this translation. I think it really captures his authoritative but conversational style. Okay, here we have a double. Another double. This is Who did this? The David Rayburn translation of Ovid's Metamorphoses. So we're not going to put that back where it was because we saw that already. That was up there somewhere. I don't need two of them. Then Livy, the Early History of Rome. This is still Arbor de Salicart? Yes. Just continues on. Penguin did 4 volumes of Livy's great unfinished work from the founding of the city. They have never done a whole volume. Once again, I will wave this thing in your face. They have never done a whole volume of Livy. They could. If you did a volume this size, double columned, you could fit all that we have of Livy left. But they don't do it. Instead, they break it up into 4 different volumes, but I'll take them. Then we have another Robert Graves, right? We saw the 12 Caesars, but Robert Graves also did something else, an oddity that Penguin decided to make a Penguin Classic out of. I'm pretty sure they don't print this in Penguin Classic anymore. This is the Anger of Achilles. This is Robert Graves' version of the Iliad. It's very strange, very rewarding. It's a very rewarding thing. I don't think that anything Graves wrote really wasn't rewarding. Could be a little bit on the dotty side, but a shelf of Iliads would have to include the Anger of Achilles just for the sheer linguistic inventiveness of it. An odd choice for Penguin, though. Okay, then we have another odd choice. It's a poem, Mr. Pope, but you must not call it Homer. It's a very, very fitting that it should be next to the Anger of Achilles on the shelf. This is Alexander Pope's translation of the Iliad in rhyming couplets. Beautiful, beautiful thing. More Livy. This is Rome and Italy. So all this Livy should be together. I have to fix that when I'm putting these back. Then we have the granddaddy of them all. This is the E.V. Ryu translation of the Iliad for Penguin Classics in prose, not in verse. This and the Odyssey really got the ball rolling for Penguin Classics because suddenly Homer's Iliad was available to you in your bookshops. It was available on the train platform. It was available in the grocery store. It was available at the newsstand on the corner. For a tiny amount of money, the change that you had in your pocket, and in English, and in prose. So that if you had horrible memories of first form Greek from 50 years ago, and you were an Englishman on that platform, and you really wished that you could get back to the Iliad, suddenly you had the ability to do that without even worrying about somebody's idea of versicality. Instead, you could just read it as prose. And it sold like a whirlwind for Penguin. Okay, here we have another in English version. This is Homer in English. That'll give you, of course, not whole epics, but chunks where you, like for instance, you get the famous opening to the Iliad over and over and over again. See what different translators do with it. Oh, wow. Okay, great. I always forget this one. This is the Psalms in English. They have an unbelievably robust translation history, and here you have it. So you get to see what various translators have done with them. With some of the Psalms are very familiar, so you'll be able to see what's being done. And then yet another one. This is Ovid in English. Okay, so I pretty much have the whole of this series. I'm pretty sure that I do. And again, this will be selections from the longer poems that different translators do. Then we have the Elder Edda. This is not in that Legends of the Ancient North. So we have both. Is this the same thing? Is this the same book? Let's see. Translated by Andy Orchard. These are the same book. I don't need them both. I don't need them both. Much as I love it, I don't need them both. Then we have the Robert Fagel's Iliad. This is also a double. We saw the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition. This is just the normal black spine trade paperback that they sold by the barrel load to colleges, to universities. Bucket loads, just whole slates of this thing were sold. Not the Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, but this thing. And this is also they made a big deal out of this. This was hugely printed. It was hugely shipped to bookstores, not just to universities. And the old bookstore where I used to work had silkscreened art of book covers up on the wall. And when that bookstore closed, the home office in New York wrote to the managerial team and said, well, obviously send us the counting machines, send us any kind of equipment that still works. And when my store manager, bless her heart, wrote back and said, well, what about the book hangings? The office had no idea what books even were. So what on earth? What? If you ask this question again, you and your family in different jobs will all be fired and maybe executed. So she said, well, I've got the bookish staff. I've got the most bookish staff in Boston. You can just pick which ones you want. And there was a huge one of the cover of this book, a huge silkscreen, framed silkscreen. And we were sort of, the staff, those of us who were still around, were sort of joking about who would get what. And I did not need to make a request for Homer's Iliad. Everybody else said, oh, obviously Steve gets that. And then we're done. We managed to finish in under 40 minutes. This is the Penguin Classic edition of the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Wonderful. Not really a narrative reading experience, but eye-opening. As the full and complete and detailed scripture of a different religion. It's eye-opening. And there you have it. That is the Penguins for today. We got 2 whole shelves done in a relatively decent amount of time. So I'm going to wrap this up and count myself lucky. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.